I know I am the person in between, well, your next break, so I'll do my best to keep it more engaged. But I believe the previous session was a great segue, thanks to Ricky, with the comments he made about, with his IT background and expertise about spreadsheets and digitization. So thanks to him for giving a good intro and segue into my presentation. So I'm here to talk about the regulatory affairs and how technology and AI is shaping regulatory. I like to usually start off with a statement, and if you counter-argue this, please, by all means, do so. And I may be challenging some of you today in your status quo or the way you think, and that's okay as well. And you can certainly come and talk to me if I say anything that you disagree with, and it's all welcomed in your conversations, and different point of views and vantage points are definitely welcome. We all know complexity in regulatory affairs is increasing at a record pace. That's why we're here. And I've heard comments about how EU MDR, IVDR are very complex compared to the FDA, other markets. And we have someone here at the conference from Qatar and from their Ministry of Health, and they're looking into, from what we understand, a regulatory legislation that they're trying to draft. So it is getting more and more complex in the medical device space. And if you don't believe me, look at this data that we pulled from the FDA and the EU, and it says that you can see the increase in the number of regulations. It's just getting harder, more complex. Regulations that are being drafted are also getting more complex. We have more standards. We just have a lot more to comply with. And it's not just that, but it really is a market problem, right? That's really what it is. We have accelerated pace of innovation. I mean, you talk to a lot of these startup Medtech companies, and wow, it's mind-blowing what they're innovating, and it's hard to keep up with the pace of regulations based on just the innovations happening in the Medtech space. Increased competition for all of us. And then you have constrained resources. That's not going away. Budgets are always reduced, and especially for regulatory and quality folks, you just don't get enough budgets to invest in the right platforms and give the right resources to your teams. And then the financial pressure that's always there, it'll continuously be there. So these market problems that I've listed here, they're going to constantly exist, and we have to work within this guardrail, if you will, and meanwhile getting the products out in the market. I want to share a story about a bunch of penguins, and their iceberg is melting, or so they think. So these emperor penguins are living on a glacier and living their life, living their gleeful life, and they all have different personalities. And I want to introduce you to Fred. Now, Fred is the scientist, the analytical penguin in the colony, and rather than sunbathing and having fun, he likes to go out, analyze the sea, make sure everything's fine. He's very observant, and he's constantly keeping an eye out on the glacier as well, making sure everything's good. So one day, as he always does, he was out on the glacier and by the water, and he noticed there was a crack in the glacier. And he thought, oh my God, our glacier is melting. And immediately he thought, oh, what do I do now? So he goes and he reaches out to Alice. And he reaches out to Alice out of all the people that he knows, because Alice just happens to be very much more amicable, a good listener. So she has the skill sets where he could go and talk to her about this problem, this observation he has made. So he goes to Alice and he says, Alice, our iceberg's melting. We need a strategy. We need to figure out a way to address this. And Alice, being with the right personality type that she had as a leader, she listened to him. She was very approachable and paid attention. So she went to the site to see what he was talking about and about this crack in the iceberg. So now it's Alice's job. So he did the right thing. Fred approached Alice. Then Alice goes out and she creates this board, gathers everyone and has this board meeting. And everyone in the board, different personalities, just like we have even in our households, let alone, organizations and teams. And everyone's thinking, what problem? No, there's no problem. You have, people are debating. They debated on this. Some nodded. Some were defensive. Some were aggressive. Some were assertive. All sorts of personalities happen. Discussions happen. No one really believed, no, our iceberg's fine. Nothing. They couldn't, obviously they were not as observant, so they didn't believe Fred and Alice. Ultimately, the conclusion was they needed evidence. Now, let's talk about the challenges that are facing us. That's really what the focus of my conversation is today. And this is based on the data that we have received. We talk to clients all day long. We do surveys, and a lot of these problems recurringly come up. One is difficult to keep up with regulatory requirements, and especially if you're a global organization, international team, international regulatory affairs, you really understand this pain point. It is extremely difficult to keep up with the constant changes to regulations. Another one that comes up is managing product changes, especially if you have a large portfolio, if your organization's looking to acquire another company or you're trying to divest, becomes even a bigger problem. Labeling changes, this change, that change, what is the impact? How do you manage that? Not having the right workflows for it. And redundancy, administrative work, a lot of redundancy of effort. Ricky talked about spreadsheets. I mean, this is how a lot of the regulatory teams we know have been managing their submissions and tracking hundreds and thousands of SKUs on Excel sheets. It's crazy, but that's how it's being done. And then the time to build submissions. International submissions are getting more complex. I know FDA has the E-Star, but it has not been easy to use. There have been bugs in it. So just getting products out to the market, building submissions is another pain point that has come. And the other one, the new one, is AI. Where is AI being used? How should we use it? This apprehensiveness, well, it's our data, should we use it? Clients will ask, do you have AI policy? And we get it. I mean, if I were in your position, I would have the same apprehension. But these are some of the challenges. But the problem is AI is not going anywhere. If anything, it is becoming more this ubiquitous thing, this omnipresent thing. Everyone's talking about AI. More and more tools are utilizing AI. So you can't escape it. You have to understand it and see how you can adopt it. So let's dive deeper into some of those problems. Let's talk about the Reg Intel. And this is Intel. So we provide, as at RegDesk, we have a software platform, and one of the components of that platform is regulatory intelligence. So I went and I was curious, and I thought, I wonder how many changes did our system capture? And I looked, and this is data from April, so a few months ago, and I noticed that there were 90 changes, and I was thinking, unbelievable. How is one person or a team of individuals supposed to keep up with 90 changes? And then you have to understand, well, what is the impact of these changes on your products? And, on and on it goes, the assessments you have to do. And just keeping up, and if you don't have proper tools, if you're not using AI, and if you think you have captured these by subscribing to a bunch of newsletters, you've probably missed out on at least half of these changes. And then this upkeep of documentation, especially when you're building submissions, and then the redundancy. You have the same documents you have to submit or provide to your distributors 20 different times, and the same content, just a lot of repetitiveness, and regulations keep changing. So the question is, are you able to really keep up with the pace? Let me share a case study, and these are real problems. I had a client, a small IVD diagnostic company that approached us, and they approached us for Reg Intel specifically initially because they had gone through audits, and in the audits, they just couldn't keep up with the Reg Intel. So in 2021, they had about 3 CAPAs and then didn't get a system continue to work the way they were functioning. Then next year they had additional kappas open, and then as you can see, they just had increase in kappas open because they didn't purchase a system, didn't have tools, just trying to gather intel on their own, and the auditor they kept missing them. So where I'm getting to is that the old way just doesn't work. And like I said, I'm sitting here questioning you, and if you believe the old way still works, we would love to have a conversation with you. Because the old way of gathering reg intel is, oh, we have distributors on the ground, but are they really giving you alerts? Is that what's keeping them up at night to say, oh, we have to provide our client this latest update that's happened? Probably not. They're salespeople. That's their job. They're just worried about selling your products. Consultants, how much can you rely on your consultants on a day-to-day? Are they keeping you up to date on day-to-day? Regional teams, relying on agency newsletters, can you really just rely on that blindly and then expect not to have any kappas or any issues? That's wishful thinking. And then a lot of teams will say, well, I have a team in-house, and then we gather information and they disseminate, but they're not disseminating every day. They're disseminating once a month. And then it's up to you to analyze that data and do assessments. By then, have you missed out on anything critical? And are they leveraging these 4 options to gather data? Then they're also missing out. So the problem is this entire process in itself. If it worked in the past, well and good. Expectations are different. Auditors and agencies' expectations are different too. And data shows that non-compliance actually can cost fees of up to 5% of revenue. That's significant, and we don't think of what is the bottom line. The fees are pretty hefty. And building submissions, I mentioned this, it continues to be a big problem. Most of our clients have hundreds of submissions as their goal to achieve for that year. And it could be varied. It's not all new submissions. It could be just changes and all sorts of variations of submissions that you have to do. And if you're doing them manually without any tools, without any digitization, you're falling behind, because I'll tell you, a lot of your competitors are already on top of the game of digitization and AI, and so they are getting ahead. And there are only 2 pathways really to do submissions, right? One is you can rely on your regional partners or distributors for it, or you can try to do it in-house. In-house is challenging because you don't know what does that template look like for Saudi, what are the requirements, and most teams don't have these tools to truly make these informed decisions and be able to do a lot of the work in-house. And that's a disadvantage. So we did some research and surveys, and our data shows that, this whole document, the shuffling and the rework is truly an issue. And our clients shared that an average time to address a single distributor inquiry takes them on average 6 to 8 weeks. And this is more optimistic data. Average time to prepare a submission, 2 to 6 months. That's quite a lot of time. And then they also shared that one single RA associate usually can do maximum of maybe 4 applications per year. That's a lot of work because it's all being done manually. But then if your goal is to do, let's say, even 50, how many resources do you need to accomplish your annual goal? And then the RA team, especially if you're an international team, that's where you'll really feel the pain point. I mean, we're all strong in our country of origin, the language, and we know US folks know how the FDA works. Sitting in the EU, you know how the FDA works, vice versa. But then when you start talking about Asia and some of the other markets, that's when our knowledge is weaker. We don't have the resources, we don't have the tools. And then our teams also, this was interesting data point that came through, that there was a lot of knowledge loss during remediation as well, because clients relied on third parties and consultants to do that work. And so their internal teams didn't gain that knowledge, and there was that knowledge loss. And then this is, again, specifically the last data points coming from international teams about how it's really hard to retain talent for international teams, because they feel their work is not meaningful because all they're doing is addressing questions coming from distributors and regional partners, and they just find themselves distributing data or sending them some documentation. They don't find themselves doing strategic work. So you might think this is a funny, weird picture. Why do you have a picture of a fuzzy little, cake and or looks like a cupcake here with a candle 8? So this is an interesting story, and I promise you this is a true story. This is a large company, medical device company, and this data came from their Latin America team. The leader is sitting in Brazil. So the way they function is they reach out to all the businesses, and their Latin America team is responsible to do all the submissions for the organization. Each business unit provides the Latin America team with the documents that are required for their submissions. And this team was smart because the leader is very data driven. So she asked her team to take a spreadsheet and start monitoring how long it takes for each business unit to provide the data, the documents. And they started tracking. And I couldn't even capture all the data she has. It was just listing like hundreds of data points of 5 months, how many days, how many months. And interestingly, so as they tracked the time, they noticed on average it was taking easily over 90 days just for internal team to hand over documents so that the team could start preparing submissions. And as you can see, a lot of them are over 1,000 days. So this whole 8-year story came because she said one of the business units, it took 8 years for them to give them the data that they needed. So when they finally received the documentation, this team actually got a cake and celebrated. And I had to take a picture of her cake with the candle 8. So it's a funny joke at their office, but they actually celebrated with the candle. But it's to show, that 8 years is an anomaly, obviously, but to show that a lot of this data, actually, most companies don't even capture because it's internal teams, and no one's keeping track of how long it takes an internal team to get data from businesses. But you can see how much time is just being wasted in just data shuffling. That's all we're doing is document shuffling. This is not even the timeline to actually prepare the submission or get the approvals. So if you don't trust me, let's look at Gartner, which is an organization. They do a lot of research, and they've done extensive research in the pharma life sciences area because life sciences industry is always sort of ahead of Medtech in terms of adopting solutions. And they've been using these regulatory information management systems for quite some time. And Gartner came up with this term called holistic RIM, and the whole idea is that you should look for a tool that does everything in that dark blue, and then the dotted lines are your integrations. So technically they say, well, have a holistic RIM, which means a system that can manage your product data, has the reg intel, can do the submission, content management, change assessments. Can it do all of that and then start integrating with your clinical management solution, your document management, all of these other. And what you get is this one holistic approach, which is quite powerful. And again, to show their data, what they show is that when you get holistic is when you get the highest enterprise value and scalability. And any investment you make, you should be looking at your ROI, and that's what gives you the biggest ROI, according to Gartner, is when you have holistic. Now, you may start off very at the beginning and have one-off solutions, but know that the one-off solutions are not producing the biggest ROI. Ultimately, you can start small, and then ultimately you want to get to that holistic approach and have that digitization across board. So the question's what is the future in regulatory affairs? And truly it is, if you have not yet considered, it is automation, it's integrated workflows, it's AI, it's digitization, it's what Ricky said, just stop using spreadsheets, move away from that. You have to start digitizing, and if that's not an urgency at your company, it should be, because you will fall behind. I cannot tell you this trend. I've been pitching this for some years, and in just the last year and a half, the amount of companies and the surge of requests for RIM solutions it's literally skyrocketed. So if your organization hasn't started evaluating RIM platforms, you are a little behind. You ought to start looking at that and start digitizing. So what if, so if we think of digitization, so let's work smarter. What if you had access to Reg Intel? What if the system, let the experts, let AI, let the systems like ours and our competitors give you the Reg Intel? Wouldn't it be easier? Your team can simply go in rather than relying on a Reg Intel team, and no offense to the Reg Intel teams, but imagine just having access to the list of documents that are required, the timelines, the fees, everything. You're equipping your team with everything they need to know to make informed decisions faster and quicker without having to rely on 20 different resources. What if your teams just receive daily alerts so that way they don't miss out on anything? Every day they get alerted on the key information that they require that's more customized to them, because now AI can actually give you customized alerts as well. And what if you were to work smarter? What if you build one submission and then AI can learn the content from that submission and auto-generate or auto-populate your submission for subsequent markets? For example, you build your EU MDR or IVDR, and now let's say if you want to bring that product to India, the system can auto-generate your India applications at least 40 to 60 to 80% within seconds. Isn't that working smarter? Do we really have to use the smartest people in the company to sit and do administrative work? So that's where a lot of the AI application is being leveraged in our space, at least. And that's to eliminate redundancy. So you can see at any given point within seconds, you can see the progress of the application. So coming back to the company that had CAPAs, after adopting a more digitized solution, in 2024, they finally had zero CAPAs, and they have had zero CAPAs since, because they are getting alerted. They are able to, when auditor comes in, they're able to show, look, we are keeping up to date on all the changes that are happening. And once a change happens, look, we have these automated workflows that allow us to perform those impact regulatory assessments as well. And for the company that I talked about, where they had the time to collect submission documents, once they digitized that process, so they were no longer manually requesting for documents, and there was now an automated way to send alert notifications to the right business teams to get the documents, and more automation there. You can see the timelines really drop for them. It's quite significant, and it's worth the investment. The question is, how will you adapt? Are you ready? Will you at least start exploring? You don't have to jump on the bandwagon of AI, but I highly suggest at least moving away and shifting away from spreadsheets. And digitization can't express that enough. It's very high risk to continue to use spreadsheets. Who is updating those spreadsheets? There's just so many issues with it. With all these cloud-based systems, your data is constantly being backed up. There's data recovery. I mean, your data is just far more secure. We get this question asked a lot. How do we select a RIM? What is the right process to do so? And so the biggest thing I will say, and what I can recommend, is draft your user requirements. So before you come to us, before you go to our competitors, have your user requirements. What is important to you? Is it the planning? Is it building content? Is it tracking your submissions? Is it maintenance of your submissions? What is important to you? Is it a combination of all of those? And how important are integrations for you? So you need to do that pre-work, because when you shop for a right solution, you will find the right solution that'll match your user requirements, rather than being just wowed by the companies, whoever's pitching to you their feature sets. Definitely think long term. Don't think short term. This is what we need now. But as you grow, you're going to need more and more digitization. So having one singular platform that can do a lot more for you is a better option than having this myopic view to say, I just need tracking, so I'm just going to look for a tracking solution. Now I need Reg Intel, so now you have a separate Reg Intel, because once you have too many disparate solutions, then that's not efficiency either. Workflows, look for systems, and I mean, you should be requiring as sort of imperative, mandatory thing of software companies that if they do only portion of the work for you within their system, that should not be good enough and not acceptable. You should expect lot of workflows within the tool itself. That way you're not doing half of the work within the system and then the rest of the work you're doing manually in spreadsheets, right? That defeats the purpose. And the integration piece is important. And I know this one's easy. Everyone talks about it. Most clients come to us. The first starting point usually is number 6, integration. Will your system integrate? Most good, robust RIM solutions should be able to integrate with this solution. Nowadays, they have these middleware iPaaS platforms too, which makes it even easier to do integration. So that should be your least of your concerns. Typically, that can be done very easily, but definitely have your user requirements. So coming back to Fred, what happened to them in their colony? So Fred had to run an experiment, right? The board wanted evidence. So what he did was he filled up a glass and with ice water, and he had to prove that there is really that there is a crack. So the evidence was that, you know, he would leave that bottle overnight, and when he'd wake up, if there was a crack in the bottle, that they would all believe him that there is a crack in the iceberg. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. So he was right. Now, why was it difficult for the board to really believe him and understand him? Because ultimately we're all humans, and as living beings, we just hate adapting to change. Every living being hates adapting to change. Change is difficult, whether that's a conversation or changing our behavior, even changing, like shifting from spreadsheets to digitization as common sense type topic that may appear, but it's not. It is difficult for teams to adapt to the change, learning a new system, not building submissions in Word, but rather, you know, these new AI tools. It is a change of behavior, and change is very difficult. So this is a very well-known sort of this graph of how difficult change can be. And you can see, you know, we go through all these emotions of shock, denial, feeling sad that, oh God, do we have to adapt the change? But ultimately, you know, as long as you can come through and walk through the curve and walk past all your emotions and apprehension, then you can get to the other end. So what this little story about this colony of penguins teaches us is that it's to identify and adapt to change. Really, that's really my one message is the change is happening, digitization's here. There are a lot of RIM solutions out there now, more and more coming up for the Medtech space. So this is inevitable. And if this weren't happening, this change, you wouldn't see that many RIM solutions out on the market. So don't overlook the change. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. You want your glacier to exist, the colony to exist, you must adapt to change. And that can only be possible with good leadership, with somebody taking that step. It's sometimes senior regulatory associate that goes to their director level and says, we need this. Somebody has to speak up, somebody has to advocate for this. It just doesn't happen. I know a lot of times leaders are advocating, but if you're not a leader, I can share so many stories with you where it started, not with the leader, but went to the leader to demand for a solution. It's a calculated risk, but the ROI is certainly there. So I leave you with this thought, will you let your iceberg melt? Thank you, everyone. Okay, yes. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I just have I'm just getting into AI and being very confused, of course. Would you be aware of AI models, apps, agents that would be usable right now to deal with these problems that you've described? And I'm mindful of the fact that I recently discovered the Hugging Face internet site that lists something like 1.5 million AI models. And one wonders, are any of them usable? So any comments on that?
Yes, I know there are a lot of device and pharma companies using their own AI tools too. I know we talk a lot about ChatGPT and OpenAI, and they seem very public, but they have actually business level solutions within those as well. There are companies who have adapted those for their internal teams to utilize, and they are. And companies like ours who are using AI, we are using our own AI models as well, and so you don't have to worry about it. You can just simply, we are adapting and integrating AI in a way that you don't have to think twice about it. You just perform the function, and the AI is just working in the background. So yes, there are a lot of tools out there now. Well, thank you. Enjoy the break.